1% of dudes rapping, they ain't nice as me. 98% ain't lived the same type of life as me. The judge gave me life and then they sent me where the life is be. That level 4 with depth and vice, the type of stuff they like to see. Two choices, fight or flee. I refuse to die a chump. I never been a mark, but damn, it's scary when that riot jump. I seen dudes cry, get punked, and some sexually brutalized. Knew a dude who lost his life and he was only doing 5 year-long racial fights when homie all you do is ride. Lonely days and nights up in a hole causing suicide. From the moment you arrive, you see the Mexican mafia, AB skinheads with big giant swastikas, pro-black philosophers, the BGF, the Kumi, and Muslims who will murk you from the nation to the Sunni. That MS was loony, quick to ride up on they rival. Even Christians went to church, hide knives up in they Bible. Political and tribal, the Crips and Damus, the Long Beach, the Hubs and the Dubs and the Grooves, the IE, the Bakersfield, the Dago Pyrus, the Hustlers quick to roll, the gangsters gon' move, whatever.
Say what's cracking, YouTube? It's your boy 16 to life, and I'm back like I'm on a parole violation. Yard down. Now, for those of y'all that's new to my page, in 1994, I got arrested. I was eventually sentenced to 16 years plus life, and I served 24 years straight in the California prison system. Yeah, that's me gassing right there on that intro. And if you want to get that tap in, hit me up on my email, 16tolifemusic@gmail.com, and I'm going to give you the info. Now, let's hop right into this video. So, for those who don't know, I did a considerable amount of time locked up, approximately 24 years in prison, right? And of course, in the course of doing that time, I'm interacting with Bloods, Crips, gang members, people in the street life, so on and so forth, right? And from time to time, when dudes go home, you got they homies on the yard who keep in touch with them, and, periodically, because of course, I don't know what exact number, but you have a lot of individuals, at least a lot of the individuals that I was hanging around with was affiliated with some gang or another. And so I say that to say, you got dudes on the yard that's going to keep in contact with they hood. If they don't necessarily keep in contact with that particular homie, they definitely going to keep in contact with they hood, and they going to get the news, right? So I often would hear about dudes, man, who would get out of prison and who would go back to their hood, and they would either unfortunately lose their life or return to prison with a gang of time, with more time than they came with, right? And, I guess for an individual who hasn't lived this lifestyle, he would think that, man, when those dudes are in prison and they're around lifers and they're around people with so much time, why don't they use that as an eye-opening moment, Well, especially when you don't have life, you would never think the situation will happen to you, right? And so one good thing too about me being from the Inland Empire, when it came to dudes from LA, I could interact with a whole bunch of dudes that other dudes from LA may not interact with due to the history of the hoods between those dudes, right? So I could be cool with a cat from Hoover and also be cool with a cat from 60s, be cool with a cat from 60s, also be cool with a cat from A-Tray, because, there was no history between those individuals and where I'm from to prevent that, right? So I say that to say, man, I got to know a lot of dudes, man, from everywhere. You know what I'm saying? And, with me, it's not where you from, it's how you come, right? And shout out to my boy yesterday, man. I just talked to a good partner of mine yesterday, a Blood, right, who I was good friends with. He happened to run across my YouTube channel and reached out to me, and, we've been hollering and so on and so forth, good friend of mine. So anyway, man, I've interacted with a lot of individuals, man, but this one dude right here, man, was my next door neighbor, a good friend of mine, man. I'm talking about Tiny Tape It Off from Rolling 60's, man. And man, this dude over time damn near became like my little brother, man. He was my next door neighbor, always coming to the cell, always had a smile on his face, just like a nagging little brother. He always wants something, man. If he wants some chips, he wants a soup, give him $1 so he can go to the canteen and get him a soda. And the dude always had a big smile on his face, man. And Later on, I heard that he had got out and unfortunately lost his life, man. And it was real sad to me because, like I say, this was a good dude, man. You know how you see sometimes in prison, you see some dudes in prison, and you like, man, that dude wants to go out and either kill somebody or get himself killed. Tiny Tape It Off wasn't one of those individuals, man. This dude always had a smile. Now, I might could have heard him going out and, catching another dumb case, maybe doing some flocking is what a lot of the youngsters is doing, burglarizing people's houses and this and that. But overall, he was a good dude, man. He didn't, he wasn't no turned up dude, always gang banging on dudes out there trying to cause problems. He ran with his little crew of young cats, and around the time I met him, I want to say it was around maybe 2009, 2010. He may have been 19, 20 years old. The dude was just basically like a kid to me. You know what I'm saying? Around that time, I'm probably like 40, and the dude, good dude. I think how I met him is he moved on the tier. I believe at that time I was living in a cell with a dude by the name of Miles, and Miles was from Louisiana. Miles happened to run a store, which is basically he'd go to the canteen, to the main canteen that you're only allowed to go to once a month. He'd buy a whole bunch of stuff, and then he'd come back to the yard, and he would mark it up. Like, say if a honey bun was $1, he may sell them for $1.75. And so I believe this is probably how I came to meet Tiny Tape It Off, in the first place to begin with. Then, like I say, over a period of time, we just started hanging out. Maybe I would see him in the day room playing dominoes. I don't remember exactly how we started, just talking and hanging out and being cool, man. And Tiny Tape It Off, he always had a big smile on his face, and he had a cold little walk. It was like almost maybe one of his legs was a slightly bigger than the other or something. He had a real distinctive walk, man, and he always would talk about Lady Bo. That was some female from his hood. He loved him some Lady Bo, and I would always clown him, telling him, yeah, you can't wait to get back out there to Lady Bo. And he would just, his face would light up. He'd smile, from ear to ear, man. And so I remember one day a dude from his hood had pulled up, right? Or a dude who at one point in time was from his hood, and he had some suspicious things connected to his name. The dude was a Guatemalan, right? And he was probably about 5'5", 5'6", maybe 145. I'm talking about the Guatemalan dude. Went by the name of Sicko. I'd done a story on him before, And so when Sicko had went to the halls, according to these dudes, juvenile hall, he had stopped banging 60s. I guess maybe the SAs was pressuring him or whatever. So now when he came back to the pen, we was at CMC East. Now he's banging 60s again. So, his homies is kind of looking at him like, okay, they wouldn't figure, they was trying to figure out if they was going to let him hang or whatever. So I guess, collectively they decided, okay, he going to hang, but he going to be on suspect status, right? And so over a period of time, he done a few things, man, to make him even look more suspect. His real name happened to be Douglas. So I started calling him Thugless Douglas. I was saying it wasn't no thug in him. He was, he was Thugless Douglas. Now around that time, actually, it was a few dudes on there from 60s, right, that I used to, hang out with or talk to, because they was younger, but, I would, talk to them all, man. It was my boy Flintstone. It was Rollo and Tape It Off, and they had a little crew of youngsters, and I would, interact and laugh and clown with all these little cats, right? And so it was another dude on the tier from 60s. He was probably about 27, 28, a quiet dude, reserved too. His name happened to be Thug. I heard, unfortunately, he also got out as well and lost his life. So rest in peace to Thug too, man. But me and Tape It Off, we would be clowning about Thugless Douglas, you know what I'm saying? Because he was, like I said, he had a lot of suspect things around him. His final straw was one day, I don't know what made him decide to do this, right? Because the dude was soft as mother's love, Thugless Douglas. He decides one day to come out on the Weight Pal and have a hood that the 60s are historically known for beefing with. He wrote it on his workout gloves and then crossed it out like he gang. Now when you do some stuff like that, it's like you gang banging, you set tripping. And so while he's on the workout pal doing push-ups, a dude from the hood he had crossed out happened to see it. So the dude looked at the gloves. He did a double take. He like, man, I know this dude don't got my hood crossed out on his gloves. The workout pile or the workout area happened to be not too far from the tower, like the tower that's behind me. And so the dude glanced. He looked at the tower to make sure the tower wasn't looking at. Pop, boom. Gave old Thugless Douglas a two-piece and laid him out right there on the yard, right? Had him sleep and snoring, you know what I'm saying? Just so happened, Thugless Douglas was in the cell with a good friend of mine, my partner KG. You know, if you guys been around quite a while, the dude who started calling me Arthur Trash, he said because of my lack of tennis skills, right? So when he get knocked out, right, by the dude who is from a hood that historically beefs with the 60s. The other 60s on the yard, they not tripping on the dude once they find out what happened. They tripping on Thugless Douglas, because it's like, why is you running around here creating and causing trouble when you know you ain't built like that? So I guess they told him they was getting ready to hop on his helmito with a good old-fashioned DP. Boop, bop, beep, beep, boop, bop, beep, boop, bop, bop. You know, lefts and rights with all they might. That's when Thugless Douglas really realized he wasn't built for this type of lifestyle, so he decided to roll it up. So he asked my partner in the cell, KG, during count time, hey KG, how you roll it up? My boy KG said, man, how the fuck should I know? I ain't never rolled it up before. So so when the officer Webster was coming by doing count time, Thugless Douglas told him he had to get on like he been shit on, man. And so he was out of there. But anyway, you know, me and my boy Tiny Tape It Off, we used to laugh and clown about a lot of stuff. You know, I used to tell him, man, damn, your name is Tiny Tape It Off, homie. It's going to take you forever to even spray paint that on the wall, homie. And so he ended up going home or whatever, you know. And unfortunately, later on, man, I heard that he had got killed. I didn't never know why, right? I mean, or exactly how it happened. You know, somebody just said, man, you know, Tape It Off got killed or whatever. So it was always different, you know, rumors in the air, so on and so forth, right? Which really, you know, like I said, that was my little bro, man. That was my little partner. He'd always come to the cell with a big smile on his face, man, and always laughing and clowning, always want something or whatever, you know. And a lot of dudes on the yard had, you know, a lot of love for Tape It Off because he, just like I say, he was a young kid, man. And so one day I happened to be watching this show called Rap News Street Politic, and the story was about a couple. The dude was from a hood who historically beefs with the Rolling 60s, and the female was from the Rolling 60s, or at least according to this story, was like an honorary member. She had a lot of respect in the 60s hood, right? And so it was kind of awkward that these two individuals who are from hoods that have a very violent history would be in a relationship together. But that's not rare. You know, you often find a man and a female from areas that don't get along in a relationship, right? So that wasn't rare. But the couple, they was out there doing a whole lot of stuff. According to this story, they was involved in several murders, right? And so I'm just sitting back chilling, listening to the story, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they mentioned the name of my boy Tiny Tape It Off, and mentioned that he ended up getting shot and killed. And I was just surprised. I could not believe it, man. I said, damn, that's how the homie died. Because actually, before I ran across this story, since he was my next door neighbor, I knew his name because sometimes they'd come, you know, give him mail or whatever, or call him to report to the medical or whatever. So I knew his name, right? And so and that's rare because a lot of times you might do time in prison with somebody 10 or 15 years and never know their real name. But at this particular prison, CMC East, they used to call out your whole name over the loudspeaker or whatever. And then, like I said, by him being my next door neighbor, they would, you know, I would hear when they would give him a slip or give him mail or whatever, right? So I knew his name. So I had researched his name and looked up his name and found the article. It was just a brief article that just described him briefly being shot. It didn't really have any information. So like I said, back to I'm watching this channel called Rap News Street Politics, a very good channel, man, and they go deep and in depth about, you know, situations, gang related situations, right? And so it mentions his name and how he was killed. And so let's get into that right now, man. I'm gonna switch formats and I'm gonna show you guys what I was listening to when I found out exactly how my partner Tiny Tape It Off lost his life.
And she also had ties to 79th and Normandy and 74th and St. Andrews in the A-Trays. And I think she was also dancing in the club. So she's somebody that one of these two know, and she took him to meet up with Sean Pryor and his wife Sandy, who was serving out of this motel over here in Inglewood. Now again, August 9th is 2 in the morning. All three of them walk up to the hotel room, but Tiny Diamond fall back and let Tiffany Doxy and Lady J-Bone knock on the door. Tiffany introduces Lady J-Bone to Sean and his wife, and they go inside trying to get the sack. At this time, Tiffany dips out the room and leaves Lady J-Bone in there to finish her business, where she slides some fake prop money to Sean Pryor for the cabbie. Now he's giving her change back and ends up noticing that this is fake movie money and tells his wife to get the strap because this bitch trying to play with me.
Now, the lady that he's talking about right here is different than the female that I mentioned that Tiny Tape It Off would always mention. Her name was Lady Bo.
The crazy part is he was pump faking. He didn't have that thing. And this is when the tussle ensued. So she trying to get out the room and he then pulled her and hemmed her up. Tiny Diamond noticed it go all bad and he come to the room and try to pull her out. Now somehow they get the door closed. Tiny Diamond ended up breaking the window and busting through the window, killing Sean Pryor, hitting him in the chest and leaving him laid down face on the ground in a pool of blood and fake prop money. Now I believe Sean Pryor was a part of the Deuces Motorcycle Club, and he did have ties and stayed in Compton, I believe, in the Fruittown Paroled. But he was the next victim to seemingly lose his life surrounding this relationship between Tiny Diamond and Lady J-Bone. Now, as you can see, it just so happened that they sitting here taking turns on murders. And one thing we have to know, they still got the same 4.5 that was used to kill Marcus Wilkerson. Now, luckily, Sean's wife wasn't hitting this situation, but she saw everything and she knew Tiffany Doxy. So as the police pull up to the motel, Lady J-Bone hops in the car with Tiffany Doxy and they follow Tiny Diamond to get away from the scene, and they end up on 79th and Van Ness, on the borderline of the families and the A-Trays. Now, mind you, Tiny Diamond did have ties to 80th Street. I believe he stayed around 80th and Dinker, and he also had recent ties to Hemet. But nonetheless, this is his hood. He's familiar with this area. So they pull up to 79th and Van Ness and pulls into a little store going ahead of Tiny Diamond. As she's backing into her spot, car in reverse, Lady J-Bone whips that same 4.5 out and shoots her in the face with a bullet lodging in her neck.
Now, just to get y'all up to speed, because I started in the middle of this story. So the two individuals that he's talking about in this story, Tiny Diamond and Lady J-Bone, have been riding around periodically, just into this and into that, and eventually was charged with several murders in the Los Angeles area.
Jumps out the car again while the car is still in reverse. The car then backed up into the wall, left the car running, and she runs to a vehicle that's captured on surveillance video that resembles the same black Malibu that Tiny Diamond got. Now the store, like I said, got the surveillance video. It showed the muzzle flash inside of Tiffany Doxy's whip, and it showed Lady J-Bone hopping out and getting on foot. Now, all of this transpired within 15 minutes of the murder at the motel on Imperial and Cherry. So it was very easy for the police to link these two crimes together. You got one female witness at the first scene on Imperial and Cherry describing the type of clothes that matched the female that jumped out of Tiffany Doxy's car on 79th and Van Ness. And of course, like I said, the female also knew Tiffany Doxy, who was initially a suspect turned into a victim because they wanted to get rid of her ass because she was a witness to a back door that went bad and Sean Pryor losing his life. Now, as police pull up on both of these scenes, Tiny Diamond and Lady J-Bone end up pulling up to Dope Boy from A-Tray Gangsta Crib to cool off. Now, at this point, it said that they got a post-murderous sexual rendezvous in the shower to make sure all the blood is off them and everything, because when he busted through that window at the motel, he had cut his hand up. So they got the Dope Boys laid low, cleaned up, and proceeded back like everything was normal. And 4 days later, they find themselves in the middle of 60 Hood on August 13th, 2016 on 63rd and 11th Ave.
Now, in the article that I researched, it said that at this point in time, Tiny Tape It Off was 27 years old. This is 2016. So I ran across him somewhere around 2009, 2010. So like I said, once again, man, the dude was only like 19, 20 years old when I first met the dude, man. Young, likable person. But anyway, let's get into it.
Again, still with the same 4.5 and still in this black Malibu. They pulled up over here on 63rd so Lady J-Bone could attempt to sell a cell phone to the hood mechanic. Now again, 63rd and 11th Ave, the middle of 60 Hood.
And one last thing, like I said, I'm watching this story just enjoying the channel. I had no idea that, my partner, Tiny Tape It Off, would be mentioned in this segment.
There's only one reason somebody from A-Tray would be over here, and Tiny Diamond understood that. That's why he stayed in the car and reclined his seat back. But as Lady J-Bone is trying to sell this phone to a dude named Jose, Tiny Tape Off, Kenyatta Thornton, 27 years old, hothead, is bailing up the street off 63rd and 11th Ave. He says, "What's up to Gigi?" Like I said, she's somewhat of an honorary member over here, and everybody knows her. He says what's up to her, and he looks at the black Malibu, and he asks her, "Who's that in the car?" She replied, "It's nobody. That's just a homie. Don't even worry about it." Now, Jose also knows Tiny Tape Off because he fixes vehicles for him in this area. So everything is cool except for this dude that's sitting over here on the block in this black Malibu. So Tiny Tape Off decides to go check it out for himself. He walks up to the Malibu, taps on the glass with the pistol, and asks Tiny Diamond where he's from, and then proceeded to tell Tiny Diamond that it was time for him to go. He overstayed his welcome. Like I said, Tiny Diamond already alleges that the 6-0's got a hit out for him. So 100% he's on edge. Tiny Tape Off say it's time to go. You gotta get up out of here, and ends up turning his back for a second. At the time he turned his back, Tiny Diamond let off with that 4.5, and Tape Off turned around and started letting off with his 9 too. So they get into a small shootout over here in the middle of 60 Hood, and Tiny Tape Off is on the losing end of this situation, catching a 4.5 bullet to the chest and losing his life over here, marking the 4th murder committed by Tiny Diamond and Lady J-Bone. Now, after this cracked off, Lady J-Bone said, "I gotta go." She told Jose, "I gotta go," jumped into Malibu, and peeled up out of there with Tiny Diamond. Now, like I said, they both start getting off, so police get to the scene looking for a gun on Tiny Tape Off. Like we see many times, before the police got there, the crowd had gathered and that took the gun and his cell phone off his body for whatever reason. Again, he seemingly was already deceased at the scene. Nothing matters, but I'm sure somebody had to come up on a little thing. But a key thing that we have to remind y'all is LAPD process when processing the ballistics. With pistols, they process those ballistics and shell casings faster than they process assault rifles. We broke this down in the East Coast indictment in that Doc Thone case. It took them years to process AK-47 rounds to match them up to other crime scenes, but they instantly will match up ballistics from pistols. So this 4.5, after this murder of Tiny Tape Off, after the ballistics testing were done, they got this same 4.5 linked to all 4 murders: Tiny Tape Off, Tiffany Doxey, Sean Pryor, and Marcus Wilkerson, all in a 2.5 week time span from July 26th to August 13th, 2016. And again, the hood mechanic Jose, he saw the whole thing break off. So they got the black Malibu not only at Wilkerson's murder on Gage and Western, they got it again at the motel on Century and Cherry, again on a surveillance video on 79th and Van Ness, and Jose has now placed it again on 63rd and 11th Ave. and they catch up with this black Malibu, which was registered to Tiny Diamond at the smoke shop on Florence in the A-Trays. 2 days later, August 15th, 2016.
So yeah, that was crazy. You know, I was extremely shocked when I heard his name mentioned in this segment. Like I said, I had no idea, man. And you know, it's just unfortunate that like so many other individuals, when you come to prison, you're around all these dudes who have a lot of time. You know, you obviously hearing a lot of war stories about who lost their life, and it's just crazy how, you know, you don't take this stuff to heed. You know, regardless of how many people you have seen, you have heard about, you have witnessed, you know, losing their lives for whatever reason, when we're caught up in that lifestyle, or regardless of how many individuals you've heard about going to prison, getting life without parole, you know, whatever the case may be, it is crazy how we still somehow think that we are going to be the special one and none of this stuff is going to happen to us. You know, this stuff that's happened to everybody else is not going to happen to us. We too slick. We can't be caught. We can't be shot, so on and so forth. Right. So like I said, I was just extremely shocked, man. I always think about Tiny Takeoff. He always had a big smile on his face, always was laughing, man. So it's unfortunate, right? So rest in peace to everybody in this story, and also rest in peace to my boy Tiny Tape It Off. The name of this channel right here, once again, is called Rap News and Street Politics, and it's an extremely good channel. Anyway, man, you already know what it is. It's your boy 16 to life. Resume normal program.